What if you woke up tomorrow and everything you trusted was gone? Your job, your savings, even your home. In the 1930s, this wasn't fiction. It was everyday life for millions of Americans. This is the story of how ordinary people survived the Great Depression, when the American dream seemed to disappear overnight. The stock market has crashed, banks are closing, and millions of people are suddenly out of work. This wasn't a movie plot. This was the stark reality for Americans in the 1930s during the Great Depression. How did ordinary people survive, find hope, and manage to get by when everything seemed to be falling apart? Let's find out. The Great Depression didn't just happen overnight. It was a slow, creeping crisis that began with the stock market crash in October 1929. But for most Americans, the real impact was felt in the months and years that followed. By 1933, nearly a quarter of the entire workforce was unemployed. That's 1 in every 4 people without a job. Picture your neighborhood and imagine every 4th house with no income. The scale of the economic collapse was simply unprecedented. For families, the first and most immediate challenge was putting food on the table. With jobs gone and savings wiped out, many people couldn't afford groceries. This led to the rise of breadlines and soup kitchens, often run by charities or local governments. People would stand in line for hours, sometimes in harsh weather, just for a bowl of soup and a piece of bread. It was a humbling and often humiliating experience for hard-working people who had always provided for their families. Many had never asked for a handout in their lives, but now they had no choice. In the countryside, the situation was just as dire, but for different reasons. A massive drought hit the Great Plains, turning fertile farmland into a barren wasteland. This period became known as the Dust Bowl. Huge dust storms, called black blizzards, would sweep across the land, burying homes, crops, and machinery in layers of dirt. Farmers who had worked the land for generations watched their livelihoods literally blow away. Many were forced to abandon their farms and migrate, becoming what were known as Okies, regardless of whether they were from Oklahoma. They packed up what little they owned into rickety cars and headed west, usually to California, hoping to find work as migrant laborers. So where did people live? If you lost your job, you often lost your home. Evictions became tragically common. Families would find their belongings piled up on the street. With nowhere else to go, many people built makeshift shelters in vacant lots, parks, or on the outskirts of cities. These shantytowns became known as Hoovervilles, a bitter jab at President Herbert Hoover, who many blamed for the economic crisis. These homes were built from whatever people could find: scrap wood, cardboard, old metal sheets, and even parts of cars. Life in a Hooverville was tough, with no electricity, clean water, or sanitation. Yet, within these desperate communities, people often banded together, sharing resources and looking out for one another. So, how did families cope? The motto of the era was use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. Frugality wasn't just a virtue, it was a survival skill. Mothers became experts at stretching every single resource. Flour sacks were repurposed into clothing, dresses, and diapers. Nothing was thrown away. A worn-out tire could become a pair of shoe soles. Old newspapers could serve as insulation to keep out the cold. Recipes were adapted to use cheaper ingredients. Instead of meat, meals often featured beans, potatoes, or whatever could be grown in a small garden. People learned to patch, mend, and repair everything, because buying new was simply not an option. Even with all this hardship, people found ways to escape the grim reality of their daily lives, if only for a little while. The 1930s was actually a golden age for Hollywood. For just a few cents, you could go to the movies and be transported to a world of glamour, adventure, and romance. Stars like Clark Gable and Shirley Temple became household names. The radio was another major source of entertainment. Families would gather around the radio in the evening to listen to comedies, dramas, and music. Shows like The Lone Ranger and President Franklin D. Roosevelt's fireside chats brought the nation together and provided a sense of shared experience and hope. For children, the Depression meant growing up fast. Many had to leave school to work and help support their families, taking on jobs like shining shoes, selling newspapers, or working in factories for pennies a day. Playtime often involved simple homemade toys. A stick and a hoop, a game of marbles, or a ball made of rags could provide hours of fun. Despite the poverty, there was still a sense of community. Kids played together in the streets, and neighbors helped each other out. This spirit of mutual support was one of the most remarkable aspects of the era. People understood that they were all in it together. The Great Depression began to ease with the start of World War II. The massive mobilization for the war effort created jobs in factories and the military, effectively ending the high unemployment that had plagued the nation for over a decade. But the lessons learned during those hard years left a permanent mark on the American psyche. The generation that lived through the Depression developed a deep-seated sense of thrift, resilience, and appreciation for simple things. They passed these values down to their children and grandchildren, shaping the character of the nation for decades to come. Looking back at the 1930s, it's easy to focus on the suffering and despair, and there was certainly a lot of it, but it's also a story of incredible human strength and ingenuity. It's a story about people who, faced with unimaginable challenges, found ways to endure, to support each other, and to hold on to hope for a better future. They learned that their true wealth wasn't in the bank, but in their families, their communities, and their own resilience. Their story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find a way to shine. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to the 1930s. I hope this gave you a deeper appreciation for what people went through during the Great Depression. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from history. Let me know in the comments what part of this story surprised you the most.